Greetings and salutations, my friends. Welcome to another Russian Fishing 4 video. Today, we are looking at Old Burg, my favourite venue on Russian Fishing 4. I absolutely love this place. There's some amazing spots. We're going to talk about the various different types of fishing you can do and what works well, what works really well, and all the sort of different baits and all that sort of good stuff and a few tips. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So you start off on an island with a bridge. I've actually found that most of the fishing, especially in the margins here, isn't that great. I haven't done a massive amount of it because the bits I have just not as good. I'll just reiterate my golden rules, because there's two. One, experiment. Even if somebody says, oh, this bit's crap for fishing, mate, don't go to D4, it's rubbish. Give it a try. You might find an amazing spot or amazing rig or setup or bait that just works for you, and the fish move constantly, so it's always worth trying stuff if you're struggling. And the second one is, if in doubt, worms, because worms are the best bait in the game because most fish will eat it and it gives you an idea of what fish are there. So, let's go. They've got all the standard stuff. There's also a grocery store. Sometimes it's hard to see when you first start. It's around the corner there. So we're not going to do the island itself because we can show you all around it as we walk. Do a lap of the island and talk about my favourite spots. I absolutely like this. The lake I fish more than any other. Even though I've unlocked all the next lakes and stuff, I just keep coming back to this. I recently, on my level 22 account, just won one of the official competitions on this lake, so I kind of know what I'm talking about a bit. I'm not a world-renowned expert at this game by any means. Whenever you're wanting guides, it's always best to take from multiple sources, go on some Twitch streams, ask some people, get your own ideas, find out for yourself what's good and what works. But we did a 24-hour match, which is an hour in real life, and I got 100 kilos of fish. I came top of 140 odd people, so I know this lake pretty well by now. So we're starting off, we're going to head round this way first. So, as always with any lake, the best way to do it is for yourself. Look for features. Features are this sort of green sort of pond scum crap, the flat stuff. You've got lily pads, we've got grasses, we've got big overhanging trees and stuff like this. This lake, I reckon about 80% of this lake is really decent fishing. There's some spots that I'm going to show you that I absolutely adore, but most of this lake is decent fishing. So like any float fishing up against these logs or weeds is always worth a try. But we're going to head round to a couple of spots in particular. We've got a big log here that might hold some nice big perch next to it on a shallow line with some worms and stuff like that. If you're always wondering what baits to use, my tip is to go into here and see the records, so you can go, okay, I'm after some bream. What's the best bait for bream? But that's the top 5 ever. What you can do is click on the different regions and see what their bream bait is, so we're getting a better idea. Okay, 3p porridge, some worms and redworms. What about China? What are they like? They've gone 2p porridge. Maggot does seem to do alright as well. So you're getting a better idea rather than just the top 5. Always worth a check. So, this, my friends, is what I call, I'm just making this up on the spot and it's not a very great title, the big fish bit. Smash that. So absolutely smash that. What a name that is. The big fish bit. Saggy end. I just made that up. There is actually names for all the swims as you run by, but I totally ignore those. So this area here is fantastic. Now, when you first get to this lake, it's a natural thing to want to catch bigger and bigger fish. But you do need to be careful because sometimes your tackle will not be up to the task. If you bought, like, say, the cheapest feeder rod, you're going to struggle. You shouldn't have bought the cheapest feeder rod because you should have watched part 3 of my guide, which will tell you but not to buy that one and tell you what to buy. So go check that out if you're not sure. But what we're doing here is, this is a fantastic area for feeder fishing. You can also spin a fish along these grass or along this sort of pond scum stuff, but you want to be casting just right in the pool, right along the grasses here. Oh my God, I couldn't have placed that any better. Cast out 2 feeders and just absolutely have a ball. The best baits for here, if you're looking for sort of tench and crusions, we're talking about sweet corn. But remember, these different baits give you a higher chance of catching a certain species, but it doesn't mean that all the other species are going to eat. If you're on light gear, this is my 2 tips. If you're on light gear, especially in this spot, stay away from cheese and potatoes, because they catch big fish. If you think your tackle's up to the standard, for instance, in the match I had yesterday, I fished potatoes in this very spot and caught a 22 kilo grass carp. And grass carp fight more than most fish, so a 22 kilo by one is a bit scary. And I had carp rods. And I still had to chase the fish around the lake for a bit as well. So this spot is my big fish area. If I'm higher level and I want to earn some good gold, there's some nice commons here that you can catch on the cheese and the potatoes. For me, this sort of level, you don't really need to use boilies. I think a lot of you, if you're low level anyway, you won't be able to. But that is a fantastic spot. It's probably the big fish spot, as I said. Also, if you're in this area here as well, if you're doing a bit of float fish, if you can fish here even if you don't want the big fish. So if we go back to where we were, and you want to float fish in this little bit with some worm or something, there's also some nice perch out here, is you can cast into this hole. Any deep area on a lake is good for bream and catfish and burbot, anything that likes to sit on the bottom. You'll also catch some big roach and other fish as well, and some tiny ruff that seem to eat every bait available to them. But this is any deep holes here. So this one here, and this is my personal favourite, the 5 metre hole here. But all these are good areas, so you could try that with some worm or something, or some maggot, maybe for some bream or pea porridge if you've got that available, if you're crafting that ability. So it's getting dark, which is not ideal. It's bad timing, if anything. All the way along here, it's like when I ever get to a lake, I just walk around the edge like this, as close to the edge as you can. Go, okay, that could be a decent little float spot, and all that sort of thing. There's not much in the way along this little bit that I've fished too much, because it's just a bit devoid of any interesting features which all the fish just absolutely love. But like I said, experiment. If your fishing's not going well today, try something. Try an area you never fished for. Try one of these just sort of bland areas. There might be some massive fish in there. So next up, we've got to what I like to call the boot, which is this little bridge here. This is the boot, because, it looks like a boot, doesn't it? So this is my second favourite area on the lake, and this is crucian and tench heaven. So let's walk around this way. So if we go across here, so we are now on this side of it, and going around that way. This spot here is one of my absolute favourites for tench fishing. Now, because there is grass carp in here, in this area, but not as many big ones as there was in the previous bit I showed you. But this area of scummy bit here, I won't cast because you can see it, can't you? All you need to do is flick 30-40%, depending on your setup here. Flick a couple of feeders out with cheese on, if it's available to you. Sweet corn works really well, and baits like that to get. So if we look at the actual records, this is an amazing tench lake, and they are my favourite species, so that's why so potatoes, but they're also redworm, which you can get from digging. I probably, if you're on light kit, stay away from the diced potatoes, but if you've got access to cheese, which you can buy at Corey, which is one of the future lakes or rivers, you can buy cheese there. But if someone sends you cheese, only use it if you've got decent tackle. It's a bit safer here to use cheese, because that is the best bait for tench on this lake. I'm telling you, it is absolutely killer, this bait. So what I like to do is I fish 3 feeder rods here if I'm going after tench, with either sweet corn or cheese. I flick one rod just into this pond scummy bit here, and then the second rod I cast from that same area to sort of just here into the lily pads here, and the third rod just into that second set of lily pads just there, into this pond scummy bit there. And you will have a fun day of tench fishing. You'll also, I've had 3, I think, trophy roach just from that little first bit of pond scum here, which is the other side of here. There's another way to fish this bit if you'd like. If your casting accuracy isn't great, you can fish from here and just flick one down the left-hand side here for that bit of pond scum, and flick one just in here for this bit. Oh no, I'm here. I've totally lost my way. It's bloody dark. I shouldn't have come in. I'm an idiot. Right, this is back to the original spot. Flick one out here. This is where the roach are, right, as well. And I caught all of my trophy roach on cheese as well. So So bream and cheese. Like I said, it's a bit safer here from grass carp, but you will occasionally hook one. The other way you can fish this is just here. You can flick one into where we were just looking at, and you can flick one here, and good. And float fishing is great here as well. Really, really nice. So that's my favourite tench spots on the lake. Oh, there's another one I'll show you later. But and also, if we go all the way down to the end, there's some really nice spots here. This is the sort of shallow end, at the sort of tip of the boot. So if we're heading round, so that bit we're on here was just in G9, and now we're at the tip of the boot. And if we just go round, this is a little bit too shallow for me and a bit too crazy. If you just go one swim up, here is a really, really, really amazing spot for crucian carp. Float fishing or feeder fishing, you can even do spinning across these lily pads. But casting against those grasses, the sort of second set of grasses there, and into the pond scummy bit is fantastic, especially with baits like sweet dough. Crucians love sweet dough. There's I can't remember what's the other one that's called. So you can make sweet dough quite early on. Very worth it. Garlic dough's okay. Pea porridge is my main bait for the bream in the lake. Honey dough as well. Honey dough is fantastic as a bait. So those are my two, sort of sweet dough and honey dough for the crucians. I've had some trophies out of here. You can catch regular kilo plus crucians in here, and they are great because they don't give a massive fight, so you can bring them in quick. You're not sitting there 20 minutes, but also you can catch them quite quickly, and you can bag up on them, meaning you can get experience and silver really quick, same as that tench spot. You can sort of, fish for crucian for maybe a couple of hours. If it starts dying off and goes a bit quiet, you can then go around to the other side, do some tench fishing, mix it up, that sort of thing. So this is the other side of the boot. There's some decent float fishing here, but nothing spectacular. Not as good as the other areas, I don't think. But like I said, I'm going to keep reiterating it. Experiment. Try different stuff. Find your own way. I'm sure there's loads of little unexplored, great little spots. Here's quite nice for spin fishing as well. One little tip. If you're on lighter gear, and you've got a 100-metre line, one of the problems when you're on lighter gear is that the fish is so big that it's just taking line and taking line. So if I'm fishing in this boot here, and I'm fishing for crucians with me sweet dough or tench with me cheese, and I hook onto a 10-kilo grass carp that's a bit too strong for my gear, what often you have to do is run after the fish. You're literally walking along the bank. You've probably done it already, sort of reeling in as you go, keeping the line tension on the line, but keep reeling in. But what can happen is that this fish can swim out under the bridge and swim out over here, and if you've got 100 metres of line, quite often it'll just spool you. It'll just take all your line off. One tip for that, if you're on light gear, is to fish from this bridge, because the fish won't go directly past you. Okay, the fish is not. If you're playing a fish, it is going to stay in this boot area. It's a really important tip for people on lighter lines, or if they're worried about getting spooled, they're only on 100 metres. That's why I always encourage people to, as soon as possible, I'll go to 350 metre line. But it can't. This is less than 100 metres away, so this fish is never. So even if it takes you half an hour to play or an hour to play a 20-kilo grass carp, it is possible, because it's not going to swim underneath you. It's not going to swim directly towards you and underneath you. So really, really valuable tip that if you're on lighter gear. So we're going to carry on our merry way to my last couple of favourite spots. As I said, I'm missing out plenty of spots that are decent, but I haven't fished out a massive amount that just don't quite, do it for me, or I've tried and aren't as good. But like I said, if the fish aren't biting one day, try these little different spots. Try a bit of float, chuck a little feeder into these little pools and stuff. Don't be afraid, and don't follow people's guides directly. This looks nice for float fishing. I'm just showing you my main spots. So there's a nice bit of standoutish weed just here. This is really nice. Again, I found a really nice big grass carp here into this middle bit where these reeds are sticking up, with feeder, with potato. Really nice big grass carp, black carp as well, because they give a lot of experience. They're rare. They basically are grass carp but darker and give a ton more experience. So they're really nice. And I catch most of those on potato and cheese. But potato is the king of baits if you're looking for carp in this lake. Cheese is carpy, but tench heaven. So we're getting around to this sort of big area now. We've got this 5 metre pool, which, as you can see, is nice and clear here. There's some lovely spots to fish out from here. Probably go on right off this edge now. Nice and clear bank. And just lob them out there. Try worm, try maggot, try pea porridge if you have it. And you'll be bagging the bream. Absolutely bagging them. Nice little sort of spot there. So next spot is this inaccessible island. You can't get to it because there's no boats on this lake. But you can fish up against it. And this is my big tench spot. I've had tench over 5 kilograms here, casting against this lake. Not from here, but you can try it. We go all the way around. Nice little spot there with that pond scum. The pond scum is definitely an attractant for the fish in this game, so always worth a cast into the green shit. So we're going to go all the way around here, and we're going to go. You can fish it from here, but it's easier if you just go one more swim along to this big log here, and here it is. So we are right up against the island here. And as you can see, this green stuff goes into halfway into the lake, and there's another big patch that goes halfway across it as well. Cheese up against as close as you can to the island, all the way along that island where you see the green stuff, or even into the middle of that further patch of green stuff, is absolutely fantastic. You can bag up on tench. Really, really nice. And also potato works for grass carp. I found that they're not as big over here, not as many. This is a really nice spot because you can feed a fish, but also float fishing and spinning works as well. You can go either way with the spinning. Float fishing just down here is really good, or along into the bit sort of snaggy area. You can this little bit here is really, really useful. It's really, really nice. Just in between the 2 lily pads, you can just flick out your telly stick here, and it just sits lovely. So really, really nice. Don't be afraid of getting snagged, because you can always get out of a snag. You don't lose your line. What you need to do, if you get snagged, loosen the line. Either open the bail arm with the enter key and get some slack line. And once it's slack, just start hitting that right mouse button, and it does a little flick. It might take 10 tries, might take 20 tries, but it will always get rid of it, and you will never snap your line, because the only reason your line snaps when you're doing that is because it's too tight. So get a lot of slack line, and if it's not worked after, say, 10 right mouse clicks, and I'm stuck in this little tree here, then I'll move a little bit. Do another 5. Move here, do another 5, and eventually it will definitely come off without losing anything. So don't be too worried about snags. Fish as close into those snaggy bits as you can. So as close as up against that island as you can without hitting dirt, basically, is the best tench spot for me on the lake. Again, we can. This side as well is okay. If this area is not fishing, what I'll do is fish up against those sort of reeds going out into the water there. I do apologise, this is at night. It's not the ideal time to do a guide, but you know where I am, so you know this is the that end of it. So as we go further along, there is a very deep pool that's a little bit harder to hit because it's just such a small area. It's a proper little divot. I think if you're looking for bream and stuff like that, then I prefer the bigger hole, the 5 metre hole. Or is that over there? But it's just out here. Remember, you can always align yourself on the map. That's exactly where you're pointing, so you can make sure you just move it a little bit left. Am I shown in the right direction? Yeah, perfect. There we go. I'll cast from here, halfway across. You're going to be hitting that deep hole for some nice bream and all sorts of fish that like the deeper water. And then there's some decent-ish places along here for float fishing. I quite like that, just casting out. If you have a bolognese rod, so you can float fish against those margins. The game does state that walking along the bank does spook the bigger fish. So if there was a big carp sitting here, I might spook it. If I wanted to float fish just in this spot here, and I've run up to it like this, it might spook it. So even though I could go onto the island and just flick a little float out, it might actually be easier and sort of safer to not spook the big fish, to go it from the other angle if at all possible. And then we are back to the bridge, and we are done. This is a nice little area here as well. But there we go. And like I said, experiment, try different areas. It changes all the time. The fish move depending on how they feel, if they're getting fished for heavily, the time of day, the weather, all that sort of stuff. So if your favourite spot isn't catching, move to another one. Eventually you'll have sort of 4 or 5 good spots on the lake that you go to, that your go-to spots, and if it doesn't work, you go to the next one. So as I've shown you 3 or 4 there, maybe you can find a couple yourself and all that sort of good stuff. If you do have any tips for this lake, or you've caught some big fish and want to let other people know, please do leave them in the comments. Put some coordinates or the map reference there, so people can sort of see what bait you caught them on, all that good stuff. We also have a Discord channel where we talk about all that stuff. We post pictures and say where we caught stuff to help out other people. And we also have a chat channel. Once you join the game, if you hit Q, you can join the Loki Doki chat channel. If you hit the little cog thing, go down to Loki Doki. We've got 400 people in. Everybody's friendly, lots of new players. Everybody's helping each other out and helping each other level. We have fun little matches and all sorts of stuff as well. So make sure you check that out. Please do check out my other guides. I did a 4-part sort of beginner's guide that might be useful. What sort of tackle you should be looking to buy first, especially now we're talking about the bigger fish and everything like that. But I hope you really do hope you found this useful. Please do leave a like, share this video if you found it useful. And I'll say if you found it useful once more, just because I've already said it like 3 times. So if you found it useful, hit a like, subscribe. I'm doing lots more guides in all the different places. I'm also going to get some experts in sort of lure fishing and stuff to make a video for me on this channel. So because, you know, I know parts of this game, I'm not expert in all of it, so I'm going to get other people that fish a ton on Corey and all the other different lakes like that, rivers, to sort of help out as well. So thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye bye.